No labels.
That's a love we can all fight for.
Women are bad with money. That's what the world's been saying for centuries. But now we've got something to say.
Save it.
It's time to save ourselves by saving our money.
Until we're no longer 80% more likely than men to live in poverty in retirement.
Save it. The falsehoods, the feelings of fault.
Then, the funds. Learn how to save for your retirement at WeSaySaveIt.org.
I'm Jenna Enoch. Here's your Spectrum News in 90. The death toll from the wildfires in Southern California is up to at least 10. 5 fires still burn through Los Angeles County, spanning over 35,000 acres. President Joe Biden pledging the federal government will cover 100% of the initial costs of recovery. He also announced more resources will go to the fire-ravaged region, including hundreds of federal firefighters and dozens of firefighting helicopters and planes. President-elect Donald Trump will be sentenced in his New York hush money case this morning. That comes after a 5-4 Supreme Court decision rejected Trump's emergency request to delay the proceeding. Trump is expected to appear virtually for his sentencing. The Supreme Court will hear the TikTok ban case today. Congress passed a ban last April, requiring the social media platform to either shut down or find a new owner. The app is currently facing a deadline of January 19th before the law kicks in. Well, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish clinching their ticket to the college football playoffs national championship game. They won a thriller against the Penn State Nittany Lions on a game-winning field goal with just 7 seconds left. Notre Dame will face tonight's winner of the Cotton Bowl between the Texas Longhorns and the Ohio State Buckeyes. That's your Spectrum News in 90.
Good Friday morning. I'm meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your weather on the ones forecast. Another cold day to end the cold week we've had across the lower 48. Temperatures are going to continue to run 15 to 20 degrees below the average, staying below freezing from Minneapolis to Chicago to Kansas City, with some snowfall in the forecast as a winter storm begins to work its way across the southeastern portions of the United States. We'll talk about that plus the wildfires in Southern California coming up in 10 minutes on your weather on the ones.
Thank you for joining us on Spectrum News. I'm Jenna Enoch in for Bree. 5 wildfires are burning more than 35,000 acres of land in Southern California, leaving at least 10 dead. More casualties are expected as it becomes safe for crews to access neighborhoods. Late Thursday afternoon, the Kenneth fire roared to life, just 2 miles from a school serving as a shelter from evacuees from another fire. Well, the Palisades fire is beginning to be contained. A spokesperson for the Los Angeles Fire Department says containment numbers should rise as weather conditions improve. At least 10,000 structures have been destroyed as families reflect on the devastation of the damages and losing their homes and belongings.
My kids lost their home. We lost our home. But besides that, we lost our town, all the people we know from that town, and we lost our sense of security. We have no idea what's going to happen next.
Our Katie Strite begins our team coverage.
Several major wildfires burning in Los Angeles County.
I just drove by my house just to get some closure, and yeah, it's rubble. There's nothing there.
The Coastal Palisades fire is now the most destructive ever to hit Los Angeles County. At least 10 are dead and 10,000 structures are burned. With the number of fires continuing to spread, nearly 180,000 residents are evacuating, and even more are without power. But even in the most devastating times, the people of LA County are helping each other come out the other side.
Caring for each other. Like, everyone needs help, and sorry for crying, but it's really emotional seeing like my friends lose their houses and people losing their animals, and so we try to help each other out.
President Joe Biden says the federal government will fully cover the cost of wildfire recovery in Southern California for roughly 6 months. During a briefing at the White House Thursday, Biden called the fires burning in Los Angeles County, quote, catastrophic.
It's going to pay for things like debris and hazard material removal, temporary shelters, first responders' salaries, and all necessary measures to protect life and property.
The government has not released figures on the cost of the damage or specifics about how many structures are burned. AccuWeather, a private company that provides data on weather and its impact, increased its estimate of the damage and economic loss to $135 to $150 billion on Thursday. With more wind and flames in the area, the weather continues being a challenge for firefighters as they work through the night fighting the flames. Katie Straight, Spectrum News.
If you want to help those impacted by the wildfires, visit the websites listed on your screen. The California Fire Foundation is helping fire crews and residents. The Salvation Army is offering food, water, and shelter, along with the American Red Cross.
Yeah, we have 100 Red Cross volunteers on the ground. Our center of focus right now is to get people out of harm's way. We've got several shelters opened up, and if folks are looking for a safe place to stay, they can go to redcross.org, call 1-800-RED-CROSS, or download our emergency app and find out where the closest shelter is.
We're also learning aid is streaming in from celebrities, notably from Oscar-winning actress Jamie Lee Curtis. She's pledged $1 million to fire relief efforts. Now we're joined by Jess Thompson, CEO of the nonprofit All Hands and Hearts. It's a nonprofit that has 20 years of experience in disaster relief all around the world. Jess, thanks for being here. Thankfully, you are safe and you're in Southern California right now. What is some of the work that you're doing?
Thanks for having us. Obviously, this is currently an active disaster, so our work will focus on helping those people who have evacuated from the areas that are currently on fire. So supporting people with shelter and with the essential items that they need to be able to live their lives in this time while their homes are still unsafe. We would advise people not to self-deploy, and if you're already here, to listen to the advice of emergency services. It's really important in this phase of the disaster that emergency personnel are able to do what they need to do and that everybody is able to stay safe.
Jess, your organization is familiar with helping wildfire victims. We know you've done some work in Hawaii after several wildfires covered more than 17,000 acres. So how do you think that experience is going to help you assist helping the victims in Los Angeles County?
We've helped over 20,000 people in Hawaii with a variety of different things. So similar kinds of work in the short term to what we just discussed, and then moving into helping homeowners to replace what they have lost. This is a long-term recovery effort where people will need help to clean up the ash and debris that was left from the fire. They'll need help to repair their homes, and then further mitigation efforts to help to prevent these kinds of things in the future. So there will be a lot of work to do in this area, but we're ready. Our volunteers are ready, and when it's safe, we'll be bringing people in to help.
You mentioned the help there. Obviously, donations are important. What do you think is sort of the biggest need right now, and how can people help out?
I think that people really need to act locally. There will be different needs in different places, and what we've seen in other disasters is that areas can be quickly overwhelmed with things that people don't in fact need. So unless you're being asked specifically and you're able to provide the items that a distribution center is asking for, please don't drop off unsolicited donations. But for the items that those areas are requesting, it's typically things that people leave without. They don't realize how long they're going to have to be away from their homes, so they might not take enough essential items. So we see things like personal items, hygiene items, and then also obviously food and water.
Jess, thanks for the work you're doing and for joining us, and stay safe.
Thank you.
Former President Jimmy Carter's funeral, bringing the country's 5 living presidents together. We'll have more on the rare moment coming up in our political buzz.
Substance use disorder and addiction is so isolating. And so, as a Black woman in recovery, hope must be loud. It grows louder when you ask for help and you're vulnerable. It is the thread that lets you know that no matter what happens, you will be okay.
Hey, pal. Ready for bed?
Hey, Dad. Do we really have the fastest internet speeds?
Yeah, with Spectrum, absolutely.
Oh, that's cool. Can you use that to research volcanoes super fast?
Of course.
Can you learn to make a diorama super fast?
Yeah, you can do that too.
How fast exactly?
The absolute fast. When's your project due?
Tomorrow morning.
How much have you done? Okay. I'll get the glue.
The fastest internet whenever you need it. From Spectrum.
At Spectrum News, we're committed to strengthening the fabric of local communities through our reporting, with stories that inspire and news that matters. Streaming live on your smart TV and connected devices, plus on-demand weather forecasts. It's all there as you step outside with the Spectrum News mobile app, keeping you informed and in the know throughout your day. Spectrum News Plus, local stories connecting communities. Exclusively for Spectrum customers. Now available on your favorite devices.
Whether it's our stories, the warmth of our laugh, or our family's secret sauce, we all bring something different to the table. So make some space. The power of connection is waiting right outside your comfort zone. Learn how you can help strengthen your community at belongingbeginswithus.org/teamup.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with you on a Friday morning. We made it to the end of the week, and unfortunately this week the big talking point in the weather community has been in Southern California with these unprecedented wildfires across Southern California. And they certainly have been drought fueled. It has been bone dry since June 1st. We've got moderate to severe drought conditions across the Los Angeles region. We have picked up 0.16 inches of rainfall since June 1st. It has been very dry, which does not help out with the ongoing wildfires. And when you have those strong Santa Ana winds, it is very easy to get those wildfires to rapidly spread, which is what happened over the last several days. So we've got several wildfires still ongoing around the Los Angeles region. Evacuations continue, and unfortunately there have been several deaths reported as a result of these wildfires. So I do believe, though, we will start to see an improvement with those weather conditions as far as the winds go. We have red flag warnings still in effect until we get towards 6 o'clock this evening, which is when the winds should start to subside across the region as well. We still have high wind warnings and wind advisories across Southern California due to gusts occasionally getting up to around 50, maybe even 60 miles per hour. We've seen some gusts well over 80 miles per hour over the last several days because of those strong Santa Ana winds, and we'll finally start to get some relief from that, which is great news for the firefighters. So today, 15, 20 mile per hour wind gusts up to around 50 to 60, as I mentioned before, but watch what happens as we transition into the overnight hours into early Saturday morning. That is going to be a big window for those firefighters to help contain those wildfires across Southern California. In other news, we have an ongoing winter storm also across the central U.S. that's working its way into areas that typically don't see winter weather during the winter months. And this is a snowstorm that's working its way across Oklahoma, parts of Texas, into Arkansas, moving into Tennessee, where we could see some snowfall totals getting up to around 6 to maybe even 8 inches locally. We're also going to be dealing with the threat for some sleet and some freezing rain. So we're dealing with all the types of winter weather, which is why we have several winter weather alerts in place from the Central Plains all the way through the Carolinas. And we'll detail more of the winter storm coming up in 10 minutes.
Here's a look look at what you need to know. The death toll from the wildfires in Southern California is up to at least 10. 5 fires still burn through Los Angeles County, spanning over 35,000 acres. President Joe Biden has pledged the federal government will cover 100% of the initial costs of recovery. And Spectrum meteorologists following a winter storm moving through the south. Freezing temperatures have hit areas in Texas and Oklahoma, blanketing neighborhoods with snow and ice. Stay tuned for your weather on the One's forecast. And that's what you need to know this morning. Time for today's political buzz. President-elect Donald Trump says he's working to set up a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Trump has been making headlines across the globe for threatening to gain control of Greenland, the Panama Canal, and much more. Spectrum's Kevin Fry joins us with more. And Kevin, what is Trump hoping to accomplish with this Putin meeting, and what type of impact could it have on the war?
Right. So, I mean, if you remember on the campaign trail, he pitched that he was going to end the war between Ukraine and Russia within 24 hours, and he's been somewhat cynical about exactly the progress of that war. He's since walked back that commitment, but then, of course, the question becomes, is this a rekindling of the relationship between Trump and Putin? And there have, of course, been some analysts who have seen, for example, Trump and his suggestion that the U.S. should take over Greenland or the Panama Canal, or even Canada, as perhaps giving only some fuel to the flame and encouragement to Putin as he seemingly is trying to invade his neighboring nations, as exhibited by Ukraine.
Well, Kevin, we're also hearing that President Joe Biden is expected to deliver a foreign policy address on Monday. Biden and Trump, obviously, very different outlook when it comes to foreign diplomacy. So what's this all about?
Yeah, I mean, this is legacy setting for Biden. This is his chance to try to basically put his spin on how his 4 years in office went. And of course, he's had his ups and downs. A lot of criticism for his handling of the withdrawal from Afghanistan, and at the same time, praise for his ability to really hold together the Western coalition in the face of Russia's attack on Ukraine. Expect him to tout the importance of alliances, the importance of maintaining and stabilizing NATO. We, of course, know that Trump, the man who's about to retake office, has been very critical and very cynical about the idea of NATO and that Western alliance between most of Europe and also the U.S. and Canada. So I would anticipate that he is going to try to perhaps set the record on exactly how he views the world and the importance of alliances and cooperation globally.
And Kevin, last thing, this certainly has been all the buzz. All 5 living presidents attended President Jimmy Carter's funeral yesterday. We even saw Trump and former President Barack Obama talking to each other and smiling. Yeah. This is very rare, considering the divisive and polarizing nature of politics these days. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, we've had all sorts of little viral moments from these interactions, from Trump seemingly talking Obama's ear off to George W. Bush tapping Obama on the belly as he walked by to sit next to him. I mean, look, the President's Club is a very exclusive club. No need to kind of over-exaggerate that. And for a while, ironically, Jimmy Carter was kind of the odd man out because of his willingness to speak publicly, to be an outspoken about how his successors are handling their time in office, in particular if they're addressing the issue of human rights appropriately. Now, seemingly, and this was pretty much on full display yesterday, Trump is a bit of the odd man out, and you saw only limited interactions between him and some of his fellow commanders-in-chief as that ceremony kicked off, at least in the public view, anyway.
Very interesting. All right, Kevin Fry, thank you for your time.
No problem.
Vice President-elect J.D. Vance is officially no longer a United States Senator. Vance's resignation went into effect at midnight. It comes just a little over a week from him taking the oath of office as Vice President. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine is in charge of appointing Vance's replacement in the Senate and says he could have an announcement next week. Keeping costs down as temperatures fall even more. Crews in one state are working to save you money while increasing the reliability of its electricity as storms move in. That's next on Spectrum News.
journey towards improving mental health doesn't always present a clear path. Every Thursday on Your Mental Health, we listen to voices across our communities, discussing the challenges of everyday life and presenting accessible resources to guide us along the path to our well-being, providing hope and empowering choices that light the way to a healthier you.
Your Mental Health with Dr. Nicole Clark, Thursdays on Spectrum News Plus, available on all your favorite devices.
It's on Friday. I'll be on the field. You're gonna be there?
Is that the football guy? Can you give me a minute? Thanks.
So, do you have any plans on Saturday? 'Cause, I was thinking you're... Is
that the guy?
Dad!
Yeah, it's the guy.
Oh, I found Mr. Squishy. Louder!
Here, there, everywhere. Reliable internet where you need it most. With Spectrum.
The impact of a meal goes well beyond feeding our bodies. Because when people are fed, futures are nourished. Everyone deserves to live a full life. And with your help, together we can end hunger. Join the movement at feedingamerica.org/actnow.
Our daily decisions can have a massive impact on the quality of our lives. From the foods we eat to the places we live and everything in between, our health can send us on a quest for answers. Join me as we break down the science and politics behind some of the most important topics affecting our communities and learn what we can do about them.
Watch Exploring Your Health on the Spectrum News app, available on all of your favorite devices.
Good Friday morning, everybody. I'm meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your weather on the ones forecast. Another cold day in store for us. It's been a cold week across the lower 48, and that is set to continue once again. Take a look at temperatures in the northern plains. Will be in the middle and upper 20s across the Ohio Valley into the northern plains, low 30s into the central portions of the country. And we're also going to stay in the low 30s in Atlanta today, as well as a winter storm begins to work its way across the southeast, bringing some snowfall to some areas that typically don't see winter weather during the winter months. As we get into the next 3 days, we're going to stay below the average across the central plains into the east coast. We'll be in the middle and upper 40s in some of those communities. And how about early next week, Monday? It's going to be a cold start to the week with highs in the single digits in Minneapolis, upper teens across the Chicago region as another blast of colder air begins to work its way from the northern plains. Our winter storm, though, is going to also bring some snowfall to some areas that picked up some snow with the last winter storm. I don't think we're going to see the same types of snowfall totals like we did with last week's storm system, but we are going to see some additional snowfall as a result of this. We have snow falling through the first half of the day across Missouri, into portions of Arkansas, as well as Oklahoma and Texas, into portions of the southeast, Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, Tennessee, going to be seeing some snowfall out through the first half of the day. But we're talking about all types of precipitation as we transition into the mid-morning hours, into the early afternoon, as well as warmer air works its way northward. So we're going to see freezing rain, some sleet, a little bit of everything across the southeast, which is why we have several winter weather alerts in place. In purple, we've got winter weather advisories. Winter storm warnings are in pink, and they stretch as far east as the Carolinas. So as we get going into the next several hours, we are going to see the storm system work its way eastward. This is right around lunchtime, and we're seeing snow from the northern plains down through Tennessee, Kentucky, even into the Carolinas as well. But watch what happens as that warmer air starts to work its way northward. We're going to see a layer of freezing rain and some sleet as we get towards the end of the day today, which will lead to some travel concerns. If you're going to be out and about Friday evening, probably a good idea to stay indoors. By the time we get towards Saturday morning, this system is well off the coast. We're still seeing some snowfall across Ohio and into the mountains of West Virginia as well, but this is going to come to an end as we get into the day on Sunday. High pressure takes over. We'll see a good deal of sunshine and will also remain quite chilly. As far as snowfall totals go, though, 3 to 6 inches in some of those communities, 1 to 2 inches in some spots across the Carolinas as well. We're breaking about 3-year snowfall droughts in some of those areas, but the ice is going to be the big factor as well, adding up to around 1/4 of an inch in some areas.
With lower temperatures moving through much of the U.S., that normally means higher electric bills. Our Amber Hughes has more on how Texas utility providers are working to keep costs down while increasing reliability.
So we're adding incremental capacity as we go at the best price we can get it.
For utilities like CPS Energy, San Antonio's sole power provider, a lot has changed in the last few years.
It used to be that wind, solar, battery storage was super expensive. It's not like that anymore because the technology has gotten better.
New technology that's allowed CPS to add more than 3,000 megawatts of power since 2021, leaning heavily into solar energy. With freezing temperatures hitting the Lone Star State this week, energy expert Doug Lewin says it's a misconception that solar energy is unreliable during the winter.
Biggest day of the outages, February 16th, 2021, there was a lot of sun shining. We just didn't have a lot of solar at that time. Right now we do.
He's referring to the winter storm of 2021, which left millions without power for days, leading to hundreds of fatalities. Since last winter, the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, or ERCOT, reports 10,000 megawatts of new generation has been added to the grid.
Typical problem on the grid is not multi-day. It's in the morning or in the evening.
Although the state has invested in new energy generation, Lewin worries if the power grid is prepared for another freeze.
There have been improvements made. Copied that weather system and put it down in February 2025 instead of February 2021. I do think there would still be rolling outages. I don't think they would last nearly as long.
In the last 8 months, Texas has installed more solar than 39 states ever have, adding about a gigawatt of solar and battery storage every month to deal with rising demand.
Storage is highly dispatchable, flexible, fills in the gaps, in the times when the sun's coming up and going down.
Lewin says with ERCOT implementing winterization checks, power plants should be better equipped to handle lower temperatures.
Doesn't mean it's perfect. Doesn't mean we won't see some power plants drop offline if and when there's another major winter storm. But I think we'll see a lot less outages.
Texas is one of the fastest growing states in the country. With more than 26 million Texans relying on ERCOT's grid, power generation must continue to keep up with demand.
We've done some to bring the supply side up. We have not brought the demand side down. So that leaves a big gap should we have another winter storm, Yuri.
In San Antonio, Amber Hughes, Spectrum News.
The Notre Dame Fighting Irish clinching their ticket to the college football playoffs national championship game. Well, they won a thriller against the Penn State Nittany Lions on a game-winning field goal with just 7 seconds left. Well, quarterback Riley Leonard was named the game's MVP. Notre Dame will face tonight's winner of the Cotton Bowl between the Texas Longhorns and Ohio State Buckeyes. I'm Jenna Enoch. Thank you for watching. Your Spectrum News at 90 is coming up right after the short break. Stay with us.
Spectrum News Plus. Local stories, connecting communities. Streaming now on the Spectrum News app and free with your Spectrum subscription.
For the millions of school-aged children across the country, the state of their schools can have a lasting impact on their health and well-being.
The majority of school districts aren't doing comprehensive regular water quality testing.
As CO2 levels rise in a space, cognitive function takes a direct decline.
We visit 2 school districts working to create safe and healthy environments for their students.
Watch Exploring Your Health, Curing Our Classrooms. Available on the Spectrum News app.
You put in unlimited hours and unlimited passion because your small business has unlimited potential. Spectrum Business is built to connect you with that potential. With Spectrum One for Business, you get fast, reliable internet, advanced Wi-Fi, and a mobile line, all for only $49.99 per month. That's more connectivity at a better price than other providers. And with Spectrum One for Business, the value only grows. with award-winning multi-layered security to defend all your devices. If it's connected, it's protected. Get all the connectivity your business needs for the lowest price around. Only $49.99 per month. That's your business made limitless. That's Life Unlimited.
We said we'd never break the 3-second rule. Never do that. And never become a minivan mom.
Hey, Chris.
As parents, we say never a lot, but never happens. So when you say you'd never leave your child in a hot car, know it can happen. Before you leave the car, always stop, look, lock.
I'm Jenna Enoch. Here's your Spectrum News in 90. The death toll from the wildfires in Southern California is up to at least 10. 5 fires still burn through Los Angeles County, spanning over 35,000 acres. President Joe Biden pledging the federal government will cover 100% of the initial costs of recovery. He also announced more resources will go to the fire-ravaged region, including hundreds of federal firefighters and dozens of firefighting helicopters and planes. President-elect Donald Trump will be sentenced in his New York hush money case this morning. That comes after a 5-4 Supreme Court decision rejected Trump's emergency request to delay the proceeding. Trump is expected to appear virtually for his sentencing. The Supreme Court will hear the TikTok ban case today. Congress passed a ban last April, requiring the social media platform to either shut down or find a new owner. The app is currently facing a deadline of January 19th before the law kicks in. Well, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish clinching their ticket to the college football playoffs national championship game. They won a thriller against the Penn State Nittany Lions on a game-winning field goal with just 7 seconds left. Notre Dame will face tonight's winner of the Cotton Bowl between the Texas Longhorns and the Ohio State Buckeyes. That's your Spectrum News in 90.
Good Friday morning. I'm meteorologist Ramel Carpenter with your weather on the ones forecast. Another cold day to end the cold week we've had across the lower 48. Temperatures are going to continue to run 15 to 20 degrees below the average, staying below freezing from Minneapolis to Chicago to Kansas City, with some snowfall in the forecast as a winter storm begins to work its way across the southeastern portions of the United States. We'll talk about that plus the wildfires in Southern California coming up in 10 minutes on your weather on the ones.
Thank you for joining us on Spectrum News. I'm Jenna Enoch in for Bree. 5 wildfires are burning more than 35,000 acres of land in Southern California, leaving at least 10 dead. More casualties are expected as it becomes safe for crews to access neighborhoods. Late Thursday afternoon, the Kenneth fire roared to life, just 2 miles from a school serving as a shelter from evacuees from another fire. Well, the Palisades fire is beginning to be contained. A spokesperson for the Los Angeles Fire Department says containment numbers should rise as weather conditions improve. At least 10,000 structures have been destroyed as families reflect on the devastation of the damages and losing their homes and belongings.
My kids lost their home. We lost our home. But besides that, we lost our town, all the people we know from that town, and we lost our sense of security. We have no idea what's going to happen next.
Our Katie Strite begins our team coverage.
Several major wildfires burning in Los Angeles County.
I just drove by my house just to get some closure, and yeah, it's rubble. There's nothing there.
The Coastal Palisades fire is now the most destructive ever to hit Los Angeles County. At least 10 are dead and 10,000 structures are burned. With the number of fires continuing to spread, nearly 180,000 residents are evacuating, and even more are without power. But even in the most devastating times, the people of LA County are helping each other come out the other side.
Caring for each other. Like, everyone needs help right now. Sorry for crying, but it's really emotional seeing like my friends lose their houses and people losing their animals, and so we try to help each other out.
President Joe Biden says the federal government will fully cover the cost of wildfire recovery in Southern California for roughly 6 months. During a briefing at the White House Thursday, Biden called the fires burning in Los Angeles County, quote, catastrophic.
It's going to pay for things like debris and hazard material removal, temporary shelters, first responders' salaries, and all necessary measures to protect life and property.
The government has not released figures on the cost of the damage or specifics about how many structures are burned. AccuWeather, a private company that provides data on weather and its impact, increased its estimate of the damage and economic loss to $135 to $150 billion on Thursday. With more wind and flames in the area, the weather continues being a challenge for firefighters as they work through the night fighting the flames. Katie Straight, Spectrum News.
Our team coverage continues with Spectrum's Lydia Pantazis. She has a first-hand look at the damages from the Eaton fire, which is still 0% contained at this hour.
I'm on Lake Avenue in the Altadena area. That's where the Eaton fire is. And if you take a look behind me, you can actually see scenes like this throughout the area. Destroyed buildings, destroyed homes. Yesterday, we covered several homes that were destroyed, and also buildings, for example, a grocery store that burned down, a high school that burned down. This was once at least a 2-story building, and we know that because the stairwell that we see there. So we know this was at least a 2-story building. We see gas lines, that's why you see the flames there as well. Earlier, we talked to a man who was going to his home for the first time. He was FaceTiming his wife, who didn't want to see the destruction for herself. And he told us that he had gotten a picture from a neighbor. The neighbor had told him that her home was destroyed. In the background, he saw his home was no longer standing as well. But he said that he had to see it for himself. And here's what he had to say.
I was like, maybe somehow it missed us. Maybe, one around it, I don't know, the fire. So I was really hoping that if it's burned, then maybe not like to the ground, that we can still go get stuff. Like I play guitar, so I was like, maybe, I can still save my guitars.
Now, one thing that man did tell me also was that he's gotten a big outpouring of support from neighbors, family, friends as well. And he says that's kind of a silver lining for him because he's seeing so many people reach out to him and his family in their time of need. Lydia Pantazis, Spectrum News.
Meteorologist Ramel Carpenter joins us now. Ramel, what's the latest on the winds at this hour?
Yeah, winds are expected to improve as we get towards the end of the day today, but the drought conditions are not improving. Thursday morning's drought monitor showed severe drought conditions returning across Los Angeles, and believe it or not, we've picked up less than 1/4 inch of rainfall since June 1st. It has been bone dry across this part of the country, so the wildfires are going to still be around for the next couple of days or so, and conditions should start to improve as wildfires are going to be raging around the Los Angeles region. More evacuations in store for us as well. But red flag warnings are still in effect through this evening. And once they expire, we should start to see those winds really starting to subside all around the region, which should help the firefighters contain a lot of those wildfires. So we're going to see gusts around 15 to 20 plus miles per hour, maybe occasional gusts around 50 miles per hour, but that should come to an end later this evening into Saturday morning. A great window for those firefighters in Southern California. Jenna?
Ramel, thanks. If you want to help those impacted by the wildfires, visit the websites listed on your screen. The California Fire Foundation is helping fire crews and residents. The Salvation Army is offering food, water, and shelter, along with the American Red Cross.
Yeah, we have 100 Red Cross volunteers on the ground. Our center of focus right now is to get people out of harm's way. We've got several shelters opened up, and if folks are looking for a safe place to stay, they can go to redcross.org, call 1-800-RED-CROSS, or download our emergency app and find out where the closest shelter is.
We're also learning aid is streaming in from celebrities, notably from Oscar-winning actress Jamie Lee Curtis. She's pledged $1 million to fire relief efforts. Spectrum meteorologists are also tracking a winter storm moving through portions of the South. Freezing temperatures have hit areas in Texas and Oklahoma overnight, blanketing neighborhoods with snow and ice. Governors have declared states of emergency as officers respond to several crashes due to slippery roads. The storm has dropped as much as 7 inches of snow in North Texas as it pushes into Arkansas. TikTok's future and the First Amendment. Ahead on Spectrum News, what to watch for in today's hearing at the U.S. Supreme Court.
Here's the deal. Following the election, people need a place to explore national issues that have an impact on their community.
Good morning, I'm Jenna Enoch. This is a special report on Spectrum News. It is 10:09 on the East Coast, 7:09 on the West Coast. President-elect Donald Trump is learning his sentence in his New York hush money case. We want to join our station, Spectrum News New York 1, for our special coverage.
I want to welcome our New York One viewers and our Spectrum stations around the country who are joining us. I'm Jamie Stelter. We have breaking news into the New York One newsroom. A historic day. President-elect Donald Trump was just sentenced to an unconditional discharge, which means no jail time, no probation, or any other form of punishment. That coming down from Judge Juan Merchan just moments ago in his criminal hush money trial, which stems from his conviction back in May on 34 charges of falsifying records to cover up a sex scandal that threatened his first presidential campaign back in 2016. Trump will not serve any jail time, but he is now a convicted felon. And in 10 days, he will be the first sitting president to have this label in the White House. These are photos released from the courtroom just moments ago as he appeared virtually from Mar-a-Lago. You can see him there pointing his finger alongside his attorney, Todd Blanche. We have team coverage on the sentencing. Political director Bob Hart and political reporter Courtney Gross are here with me in the studio. Political reporter Ayanna Harry was in the courtroom in Lower Manhattan. She is making her way to a camera and will join us shortly. I am also joined by Harvard Law professor Ronald Sullivan and former federal prosecutor Duncan Levin. We have a great team here to unpack all of what we didn't hear or see it. We got the information really in kind of an unconventional way, Bob. I want to start with you and your initial thoughts.
Well, on the one hand, there's no surprise here at all. This is exactly what we expected. Legally, most lawyers, if you were an ordinary defendant, would say, this was a great day, unconditional release, unconditional discharge, go about it, go have fun, you're done. Politically, it's in some ways not a big deal. He's the president-elect. He's gotten what he wanted. And yet, the pushback that he's been doing legally shows how much this matters to Donald Trump. Your point is exactly right. He does not want that label. He's a very proud man, and this really cuts into that pride in a very deep way.
The label follows him around, but in terms of the punishment, Courtney, there is no punishment. Like all of the delays starting from back in May, this really did work on, like, in his favor.
Yeah, a jury of 12 in New York convicted him on 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. We were supposed to see a sentencing in July. That was delayed because the Supreme Court's immunity decision basically saying that presidents are immune from criminal prosecution, particularly for official acts. And there was some debate amongst the prosecution and Donald Trump's legal team about what constituted an official act. All of these cases were then re-examined. So the sentencing was put off till September, and then they wanted to wait until the presidential election. They didn't want to have any bias. That the judge included, Juan Merchan, didn't want to make sure that there was any bias when it comes to the presidential election. So they pushed off the sentencing again until November. More arguments arguments or more motions after obviously the former president won and became president-elect, and now here we are today. Decisions all along the way from Judge Juan Merchan basically saying, we need to move forward with this process, with this procedure, similar to what he said in the courtroom today, that while you may be president-elect, you're still a citizen of the United States of America, and you must be held accountable because a jury of your peers, 12 people here in New York City, convicted you on those 34 counts.
We should say that you are seeing court sketches from along the way during the trial and everything that has happened since May. We are waiting for an audio recording that will be released from the courtroom this morning, and we will play that for you when we get it. Ronald, in the meantime, I want to go to you and I want to ask you, what next? Is there a chance of an appeal now?
Not only is there a chance of an appeal, there will definitely be an appeal. The president-elect has indicated that he plans to appeal the jury verdict, and he has every right to. So there will definitely be an appeal, and we'll have to see what the state court system has to say about it.
And then, Duncan, I'd like to go to you and talk about precedent. I know the legal system is all about precedent. And in terms of that, what happened today, what does that mean for other people who go before the court who might be an elected official of some kind?
It's a great question, because this is a case that we've heard people say that these false business entry cases are the bread and butter of the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. And it's true. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of these cases that come through the system every year. And what does it mean for the next person who has a case that goes to a trial on falsifying business entries? And how do they get sentenced to something when Donald Trump doesn't? And, it calls into question the disparities that we're going to start to see in the system and how he got treated differently. On the other hand, this is a day that, while I know I've heard people say there's no punishment here, the president-elect of the United States, as of this moment, is a felon. He has a judgment entered against him as of a few minutes ago with a felony. And that's something that is a weighty punishment unto itself. For normal people, it means they can't have guns. There are all sorts of collateral consequences that come with a felony conviction. That may not apply for Donald Trump, but that is a punishment. And so it's not nothing, but it is different. And it will be a case that other defendants are going to point to for many years, saying, well, if he didn't get to go to jail or he didn't have a punishment, why should I?
Well, exactly. And thank you, Duncan, for saying that, because not only, Bob, did he not get an official punishment, he does have the label, as Duncan pointed out, but he is going to be the president of the United States.
Yeah, I mean, so many boundaries have been shattered by Donald Trump, and this is just one more. Before we started talking on air, Courtney and I talked about how, off camera, how the bar has been lowered in a very, very different way because of the behavior of Donald Trump and the fact that he's been so successful. I should also point out, by the way, that we came within one vote of a Supreme Court justice yesterday of not having the sentencing happen and having it delayed. There was a 5-4 decision by the High Court that saying the sentencing should go on. We saw two traditionally conservative judges, Roberts and Coney Barrett, agree with the three traditionally liberal justices, saying the sentencing should go on. So this almost didn't happen today.
But it's crazy to me thinking about an appeal and how much he seems to care about this, Courtney, when in reality he was voted into the presidency, and clearly a majority of the country does not care about that label.
I can recall when he was indicted here in New York, and a lot of us here in the newsroom, a lot of pundits all across the country, honestly, said, well, now his presidential campaign is done for. There's no way someone who is indicted on 34 felony counts is going to end up winning a Republican nomination and go on to win the presidency. Lo and behold, how many months later, after a criminal conviction, none of that ended up mattering.
And impeached twice.
Of course.
January 6th, where Mitch McConnell, the Senate minority leader, basically blaming him for it, and yet he's Teflon Don.
Yeah, you talked about the bar being lowered. The standards have completely changed across the board. I want to go back to you, Ronald, and ask you about a pardon. A lot of people wondering about, can he just pardon himself?
That's an easy one. He absolutely cannot. And that's because it is a state level conviction, and the pardon power of the president only goes to a federal law, a federal conviction. So the governor of the state of New York can pardon someone for a New York state crime, but that is one power that the president-elect will not have.
And what was your big takeaway from the sentencing today?
My big takeaway from the sentencing is that it's a lesson in federalism. It's taking everyone back to, their junior high school civics class, where we talk about what the powers of the state are versus the powers of the federal government. And in many ways, Judge Merchan said, even if somewhat symbolic, that he was going to uphold the authority and the legitimacy of a state court verdict, notwithstanding who the defendant was. Make no mistake, these issues were difficult, these issues were thorny, but the prosecution and Judge Merchan did the very smart thing with this unconditional discharge, because the president-elect's liberty interests are not restrained in any way. That would have complicated the analysis in ways that would have been really tricky to resolve. So in the end, I think Duncan Levin is absolutely right. Every defense attorney worth her salt is going to come in and say, well, if he didn't get sentenced, my client should not get sentenced to any term of imprisonment. I think the response is going to be, well, for good or ill, the president-elect is in a class of one. It's sui generis. The founders certainly did not anticipate that we'd have a president with a felony record. So we are in completely uncharted territory.
As we always are when Trump's name is with the story. Political reporter Ayanna Harry was inside the courtroom for the sentencing. Ayanna, thanks for being here, getting outside to a camera so you can tell us what you saw inside.
Jamie, after one historic indictment, a 7-week trial and 34 guilty counts, President-elect Donald Trump has now been sentenced in his Manhattan criminal case. While Donald Trump was not physically inside of this lower Manhattan courthouse, his presence was certainly felt. He appeared on a remote screen inside of the courtroom virtually from Florida. His attorney, Todd Blanche, sitting by his side, and the judge did give Donald Trump the opportunity to speak, to address the court, and Donald Trump did take that opportunity, saying this has been a very terrible experience. I think it's been a tremendous setback for New York and the New York court system. The president-elect went on to say he felt he was treated very unfairly throughout this trial, but said ultimately the people of the United States of America spoke in electing him to go back to the White House. We then heard from Judge Juan Merchan, and Judge Merchan said that considering the very unique circumstances of this case, there was really only one sentence that he could impose, and that is, of course, that sentence of an unconditional discharge. And after sentencing Donald Trump to that sentence, which carries no penalties, Judge Merchan then said he wanted to wish Donald Trump Godspeed during his second term in office. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg was also in the courtroom, along with the full team of prosecutors that brought this case against the now president-elect. At the defense table, it was only one attorney, Emil Bovee, because the rest of Donald Trump's team wasn't there except for Todd Blanche, who was sitting next to Donald Trump virtually on that remote from Florida. So this is now the end of this case. Aside from the appeals, Donald Trump was, of course, convicted back in May after prosecutors argued to a jury that Donald Trump falsified business records to cover up an encounter with an adult film star, and prosecutors said that that cover-up was all part of a scheme to suppress negative stories as Donald Trump ran for the White House back in 2016. So at this time, we are now standing at American history. Donald Trump will be returning to the White House as a convicted and sentenced felon after Judge Juan Merchan has handed down his sentence today of an unconditional discharge. Jamie.
Really remarkable. You've been there for every step of the way. Duncan Levin, I want to go back to you because Ayanna brought up Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg, and I want to know, what do you think he's thinking this morning?
You know, this was a largely symbolic day that I think the writing was on the wall on Election Day, and he probably knew exactly what was going to happen with this case. This is a case that's largely defined his tenure. He came in and, you know, initially had said no to prosecuting Mr. Trump, and then there was some fury over internally about that and externally about that, and he changed his mind and brought the case. From his perspective, it was a successful case. I mean, he brought the case, he marshaled the evidence, he got a jury to convict, and he did his job from his perspective. A lot of people can differ over whether the case was brought politically, whether the case, which is, you know, a records violation case, should have been brought as a felony, whether it matches all these other cases that were brought as misdemeanors. So, you know, one could take issue with whether he used his prosecutorial discretion in an apolitical manner or a political manner, and could criticize him. But from his perspective, he did his job. He brought a case. He got a grand jury to indict. He got a jury to convict. The sentencing's up to the judge. The writing was on the wall. I think he can, you know, walk out of the courtroom having done his job, and we'll see what, you know, the voters of New York will do about it. But those are really the only voters he has to care about, is the voters of Manhattan. But I think, you know, at the end of the day, he put together a very tight case. He has a great team of prosecutors. You know, don't forget, these are prosecutors who have tried a lot of cases of deep experience. Susan Hoffinger, who led the team, did a very good job. From everything that you could say from his perspective, he did his job and he did it well.
We should point out also that Donald Trump showed, not surprisingly, zero contrition before sentencing, telling the judge, I did nothing wrong. I got indicted for calling a legal expense a legal expense. And he has been relentlessly on social media, been attacking the judge. This is not behavior you usually, most people, when they're about to be sentenced, exhibit. And yet that is what we saw today from the president-elect.
I mean, that's been his whole MO.
Yeah, the whole time. I mean, this was a part of a several week-long trial. He was found in contempt of a gag order that was placed upon him at the start of the trial, where he could not say anything disparaging about prosecutors or witnesses in the case. He was fined 10 times during the course of the trial by Judge Juan Merchan, I think at $1,000 a pop. It's unclear if he actually ended up paying that money, but it's indicative and reflective, like Bob is saying, about his, what some might say, disdain for the justice system, particularly this justice system in the state of New York, particularly the Manhattan District Attorney. I mean, all along he has said the same thing, that this is a witch hunt and he is being unjustly prosecuted, which ended up to his benefit, Bob, politically.
It definitely helped him politically. I just want to point out, he's relentlessly going after the judge and the DA. It was a jury of 12 people who convicted him. It wasn't the judge, it wasn't Alvin Bragg, and that's something that it's very important when we see him rail off on social media or speaking to people. When he goes off on Bragg, Bragg didn't convict you, this jury did.
I want to go back outside the courtroom in Lower Manhattan to Ayanna Harry. Good morning again, Ayanna.
Jamie, it was certainly an intense morning inside of that courtroom here at 100 Center Street. One of the people also inside of that courtroom is a veteran New York trial attorney, Bernarda Villalona, former prosecutor in Brooklyn. And Bernarda, I was just hoping that you could break down for us the reasoning that Judge Juan Merchan shared as to why he decided to go with this sentence of an unconditional discharge and what that practically means for Donald Trump.
So let's be clear, and Judge Merchan was very clear about this, that the only reason he was going with the sentence of an unconditional discharge is because he respects the office of the president. Because just by Donald Trump being the president-elect is not a mitigating factor when determining sentence, but because he respects the law, he respects the office of the president, he went with an unconditional discharge. So in terms of what's going to happen to unconditional discharge, there is no penalty. The penalty he got on these 34 felony counts being convicted of is that of having a felony criminal record. But even that didn't bar him from being president.
And let me ask you, what did you make of Donald Trump? He was given an opportunity to speak, and he sort of railed against this very court process as he was still in the midst of the court process.
Exactly. So Donald Trump went on a tangent for a few minutes. As you noticed during the trial, he did not speak and he didn't testify on his own behalf. So this is the first time that we're hearing from him inside of a courtroom. So the judge was respectful in the sense
sense to let him go off on the tangent. So even though he was still spewing his nonsense to the court, he knew he was going to get an unconditional discharge and not be penalized for what he was going to say. But let's be clear that he was actually making those statements, Donald Trump, for the public and for the court record and for the media to discuss.
All right, New York trial attorney Bernardo Villalona, thank you so much for once again sharing your insight with us. And again, Judge Juan Merchan has sentenced Donald Trump to an unconditional discharge, which carries no real penalties for the president-elect. I also want to mention the judge took some time to give a shout out to many of the people who work in this courthouse, saying it is the court officers and the court clerks who kept this trial running and on track for 7 weeks, Jamie.
Ayanna, I'm going to go over to Bob. It reminds me of at the end where he says to Trump, I want you to understand the reasoning behind what's happening. The whole time he has tried to stay right on the path of I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing regardless of who you are.
Right. And, you know, as Ron pointed out, now that he's formally sentenced, Trump can legally appeal this. So this is still not done. This chapter is done, but the book isn't over. And this could go on, this appeal, for a while, assuming that a court will take the appeal. And I think it probably will.
And as of this point, that appeal is really just about clearing his name,
right?
Quote unquote. It's just about the label of being a felon, because we know that there are no actual penalties when it comes to this unconditional discharge. Just reminding our viewers, there were severe penalties when it came to this. The president-elect, the former president at the time, during this 7-week-long trial, was facing 4 years in jail, was potentially facing financial penalties. We know that he's been financially penalized related to other cases that he has faced here in the state of New York. So when you reflect on what the punishment could have been versus what he actually received today, I think Bob was saying earlier on in the broadcast that if you were a criminal defense attorney, you would say that today would be a very, very good day for the former president.
No, absolutely. That's what Duncan was saying earlier. Duncan, I'll go back to you again to remind our viewers that you were saying what any criminal defense attorney worth their sauce is going to bring up this case in the future.
It's precedent setting. I mean, it's a case without precedent, but now every time someone comes into court, they're going to say, look at this defendant who is the most famous defendant who came through, and you're giving him a break. And it's, you know, obviously this case has presented its own legal issues because of the presidency and the office of the presidency, but also he's a billionaire, and he's a white billionaire coming through a system where there are a lot of people who are not, and most of the people are not, and they're being sentenced to probation and to jail time and to other things that are having a real effect on their lives. I mean, the Manhattan DA's office prosecutes thousands and thousands of people a year, and these are people who have penalties attached to these cases that are causing them to lose their jobs and their student housing and sometimes getting deported. And there are serious collateral consequences. And you have somebody who comes through and is rich and powerful and gets nothing. And so it's, you know, every defense attorney who's going to come through that, those courtrooms now is going to make that argument, and they should make that argument that this is a case that has you know, set one person above everybody else, and it's not fair. Fairness is an important part of the criminal justice system. And I think that today was a fait accompli in a lot of ways. He basically announced his sentence weeks before the sentence. And I've never been part of a sentence where a defendant has spoken so disrespectfully at a sentencing proceeding. What he said, that this is unfair, railing about, you know, Matthew Colangelo being part of the Justice Department. And, you know, that's the kind of thing that defendants, right before a sentence is pronounced, the defendants do not address courts like that right before a sentence is announced. He knew what the outcome was going to be. I think there's just a certain amount of unfairness in this that we can all point to as legal experts and say, well, this is why this case is different. But to a lot of people, this case doesn't look very different to what's happening to them.
If you are just joining us here in New York City or around the country on any of our other stations, President-elect Donald Trump just sentenced to an unconditional discharge, which means no jail time, probation, or any other form of punishment. He will, in 10 days, when he is inaugurated, become the first sitting president that also has the label of convicted felon. I want to thank all of my guests for being here with me this morning. Bob Hart, Courtney Gross, Ron, and Donald, and Duncan, excuse me. Thank you so much for being here. We will have more on this story all morning and, of course, all day. Thank you.
You have been watching special coverage from our station, Spectrum News 1 New York. President-elect Donald Trump was formally sentenced in his New York hush money case, but the judge declined to impose a punishment. I'm Jenna Enoch. More news right now on Spectrum News. Thank you for joining us on Spectrum News. I'm Jenna Enoch in for Bree. 5 wildfires are burning more than 35,000 acres of land in Southern California, leaving at least 10 dead. More casualties are expected as it becomes safe for crews to access neighborhoods. Late Thursday afternoon, the Kenneth Fire roared to life, just 2 miles from a school serving as a shelter from evacuees from another fire. Well, the Palisades fire is beginning to be contained. A spokesperson for the Los Angeles Fire Department says containment numbers should rise as weather conditions improve. At least 10,000 structures have been destroyed as families reflect on the devastation of the damages and losing their homes and belongings.
My kids lost their home. We lost our home. But besides that, we lost our town, all the people we know from that town, and we lost our sense of security. We have no idea what's going to happen next.
Our Katie Strite begins our team coverage.
Several major wildfires burning in Los Angeles County.
I just drove by my house just to get some closure, and yeah, it's rubble. There's nothing there.
The Coastal Palisades fire is now the most destructive ever to hit Los Angeles County. At least 10 are dead and 10,000 structures are burned. With the number of fires continuing to spread, nearly 180,000 residents are evacuating, and even more are without power. But even in the most devastating time,